everyone. Today's episode is going to be a little bit different. Today I'm going to be laying a little old Hollywood and Black history on you. It's a twofer. Get excited. I'm going to be telling you about one of my favorite old Hollywood actresses, not Barbara Stanwyck, I know you're surprised, but Rosalind Russell. Rosalind Russell is an amazing actress. Two of her movies I think that are my favorite are His Girl Friday and Auntie Mame. Definitely check both of those out. But I'm going to be talking about her connection to another woman, and her name is Hazel Washington, aka the Dark Duchess of Hollywood. Hazel Washington was a trailblazer. She was a fashion designer, she was a leather worker, she was a movie maid, she was a business owner during a time where it was very difficult for a Black woman to do such a thing. And what's really interesting is Rosalind Russell actually helped her to do that. So I can't wait to share this story with you. Why don't we step into our Wayback Machine and turn that dial to 1915 Dallas, where Hazel Washington was born. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find out anything about her life in Dallas, but I do know that by age 16, she had made it down to Los Angeles. And while she was here, she met and married a man called Roscoe Rocky Washington, who was a police officer. Interestingly enough, he was actually the first African-American police officer to be made lieutenant on the LAPD. He was in the Beverly Hills office, so extra fancy. So Hazel's doing that married life, you know, she's cooking, she's cleaning, she's making the home. She's not content to just sit on her laurels. No ma'am. She eventually gets into the movie industry as a movie maid. A movie maid is not exactly what it sounds like. They did do the, cooking and the cleaning, but also they were personal assistants, making sure that the stars got to where they needed to be on time, and they were wardrobe mistresses. So they were basically like women of all work. And also during that time, movie maids were paid per picture. So when the stars were working on a picture, the movie maid was paid for her duties, and then when the movie was over, she was summarily let go to find alternate employment. So it wasn't exactly the most stable of jobs, but by the 30s, Hazel had been a movie maid to Virginia Bruce, Ginger Rogers, and Greta Garbo. And actually, after her last stint with Greta, Garbo had gone back to Europe to do, movie star things, drink champagne and, hobnob with playboys. And Hazel was looking for a job. Incidentally, Roz was also looking for a movie maid because her movie maid was doing too much, okay? Like, this woman was all up in everything. She was in, almost every shot because she was so fascinated by the camera. And she was also a bit of a busybody, Roz would be sitting down, talking to her co-stars, like, hey, how's it going? And the movie maid would be all up in there like, yes, do tell, So that was a bit much for Roz, and she fired that woman and hired Hazel. Interesting bit of gossip, when Garbo came back from Europe, she obviously wanted to hire back Hazel, but Hazel was like, no ma'am, because Roz knew her worth, and she paid her 52 weeks a year. So basically all year round, okay? And Garbo could not compete. So Roz and Hazel are homegirls, and one day in 36, Hazel comes in with this gorgeous handbag, it's leather, and Roz is like, girl, where you get that? And Hazel's like, I made that, girl. And come to find out that she had seen a bag in the window and it was gorgeous, but it was way too out of her price range. So she decided to go to a leather shop and get all the little trappings and made an exact copy of this bag, having never worked with leather before. Obviously, Roz was very impressed, and she insisted that her friend go to school so that she could perfect her craft, and she offered to pay for it. So she did, and Hazel worked for Roz in the mornings and afternoons, and then the evenings she worked on her craft. Eventually, in 1941, Hazel and Roz started a business together. It was called Hazel Inc., and the ink part was Roz. Roz actually invested $10,000, which doesn't sound like a lot, but in today money, it's 180 grand. So that was a lot of money. And what was really interesting is that this shop that they opened was in Beverly Hills. And guys, segregation was still a thing. The Brown versus the Board of Education, where schools were supposed to be integrated, that didn't happen until 1954, and segregation wasn't officially struck down on the federal level until 1964 and 65, and then I believe even on into 68. So, you know, we were still struggling. So this is really, really amazing, the fact that an African American woman was able to have a store in Beverly Hills. This store was amazing. They sold gorgeous leather works to the creme de la creme of society. All the movie stars came. I'll put a little list down there, and all the richy rich people. The prices were sky high and no one had any problems paying them because the quality was amazing. So they're making biggity monies, and eventually though, they actually had to shut down their store. It didn't last very long because the war happened and there was a leather shortage. So what are you gonna do? So they went back to their star and movie maid arrangement. And while they were doing this, Hazel actually became a certified hairdresser and worked on Cabin in the Sky and Stormy Weather. So, you know, she did not rest on her laurels even whilst working for Roz. Eventually, the gals decided that they would start up a sweater business. They were both avid knitters, and this was right up their alley. They easily transitioned from leather to sweaters, and they were gorgeous and expensive, of course. Tons of embellishments, and they hugged the woman's figure. They were gorgeous. Everybody wanted one. Hazel and Roz would travel together to source materials and get ideas for fashions. They were like homies on a mission, right? They actually were asked if their differences in race affected their friendship or their working relationship. Neither one of them said that race was an issue, which is a huge thing when they're talking about, you know, the 1940s. Hazel obviously didn't stop there. She was, you know, a woman of many talents, and she continued to do her costume mistressing. No more movie maids, thank the Lord, they've been unionized. And she actually worked on a lot of pictures. In fact, one of the more influential stars she worked with was Marilyn Monroe. She actually was added into Marilyn's contract because Marilyn would let no one but Hazel dress her. Unfortunately, I kind of lost track of Hazel after the 70s. There is mention of her writing a book about her life, which I think would have been amazing, but I looked for it and I don't think it was ever produced. I know this episode was a little bit different from what I offer generally, but I hope you enjoyed it. I love stories like this, where people that have power and privilege use that power and privilege to help someone get ahead that otherwise might not be able to based on societal restraints. Since this is a little different, hopefully leave a comment, let me know if you liked it, because if you do, I've got a ton of stories like this and I'd love to share them with you. As always, if you like what you saw, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you for my next episode.